Hi Dylan, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview today. First of all, before I start, I just want to ask you a little bit about you and what subjects that you teach.
Okay, so I teach at Grafton High School and I teach in the HSIE department. I teach business studies, junior geography, history, commerce and work education.
Okay, great, thank you for that. So my first question for you is, how do you use data to inform decisions for planning and teaching in a teaching cycle?
Okay, so one thing I do, the first thing we do at the start of every year is look at the HSC RAP data on my previous cohort's performance, and from that I can identify what sections of the exam they did well in and what sections needed improving. I can even go back and break that down into individual multiple choice questions to see if there's any areas I need to focus on improving.
Okay.
From that, I can then go back and plan my lessons and learning sequences to better target those areas that need improvement, while not forgetting about the ones that I did well at.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much for that. And do you use any sort of formative assessment kind of data just in your general day-to-day lessons at all?
Generally, formative assessment, one thing I like to do to gauge understanding is I call it quick fist of five. So I'll get them to put up 5 fingers if they understand 100% what I've been teaching, 4 if they're at 80%, 3 at 60, okay, all the way down to 0. That gives me a really good quick snapshot about where the level of understanding is at and whether or not I need to go back and reteach anything.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. How do you plan lessons to incorporate engaging teaching strategies?
So I make sure that every lesson I break it down and chunk into 3 or 4 chunks, or 3 or 4 learning activities. So the students are always kept engaged. I always have a variety of strategies and technologies used. So we often start off with doing a bit of literacy. That might be followed by a bit of, if it's history, for instance, a bit of source work. Then we might use the technology, use a bit of a clip or something, and then try and tie it all in at the end. We also use things like Google Classroom, Canva, those types of things to get kids working in groups and incorporating technology into the lesson.
Great.
To keep it a bit more engaging.
Okay.
Also in business studies, I'm always finding case studies from the real world that I can tie in and relate to the syllabus theory.
I think that's really important. Like, I'm studying to be a science teacher, and one big thing that we've been learning about is incorporating real world context to make it a lot more engaging, I guess, for students. So that's definitely something that you do in your teaching as well.
Yeah, definitely, especially with business studies. You have to be able to relate the syllabus theory to real world case studies. So that's something we do every lesson.
Okay, great.
We look at businesses like McDonald's, Qantas and Domino's. We have big syllabus-wide case studies on them. Otherwise, I'm constantly coming through the news and the paper for anything that's related to what we're doing in class.
Okay, great. How do you select and use different assessment tools and practices, including feedback?
Okay, so each unit we teach, we have a pre-test and a post-test, which is done to gauge a level of engagement, understanding at the beginning and the end of each unit, and to see if there's any areas that we need to go back and reteach if need be. Sometimes we use exit slips, which is a pretty simple one, with just sometimes 3 questions that the kids have to answer before they leave the classroom. With regards to feedback, especially for stage 6 students, every task I set involves drafting. Sometimes I have students submit 2 or 3 drafts and refine them. I'm always giving constant feedback on that as well. And I'm also, I always ask the students for feedback on my teaching as well to see if there's anywhere I can improve.
Oh, great, thank you. So with your different assessment tools, you mentioned, doing drafting of essays and tests and things. Do you do any other sorts of assessment at all, like any digital types of assessment? Is it mainly
Digital, not so
written?
much. Some of our junior history and geography projects involve the students having to bring in a physical object. So one of the ones we do on World War One, the students have to make an artifact based on World War One and bring that in. Also, in business studies in year 11, I get the students to run a market day at school. So they come up with their own business and they brand it and market it, and they finance everything they want to sell, and they'll set up a stall for the day out in the quad and run their own little businesses, which is a really good practical one for them to do.
Cool. They must really enjoy doing something like that.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, something more hands-on. Okay. How do you make judgments on the quality of the student work and engage in moderation practices?
Okay, so I always make sure I scaffold complex tasks to break those down, because we've always got students with different levels of ability and understanding. We also do collaborative marking, so usually if we have a written assessment task come in, we'll take a few samples out of there, and a few of us colleagues will sit down, we'll all mark them individually, then we'll come back and have a meeting. We'll compare how we went and where we think each respective task sits in relation to the criteria, and from that we'll establish a scale and then go on use that to help guide our marking with the rest of it.
Okay. Is that something that you do with juniors and seniors, or more just seniors?
Yeah, all the way through.
Oh, okay.
We'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So teachers who are, I guess, teaching the same subject, you kind of come together and do that type of moderation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have a meeting every time we get assessments in, and then we'll all sit down together as a group, and we'll usually pick out a few samples, and start the process from there.
Okay.
Also, with regards to moderation practices, especially with my seniors, when we start doing HSC sample responses, especially when we start, I'll often break down the question with them and then model explicit answers and pick those answers apart and show the students exactly why I've answered it the way I have, and then relate that back to the syllabus.
Okay.
And then over time, you can eventually take those training wheels off, and you'll find that the kids, if they've done enough practice, they're able to do it themselves.
Okay. And have you done any HSC marking before?
No, not yet, but I've nominated to do it this year.
Oh, great. I've heard that it's a really valuable learning experience for teachers. Yeah. Okay. How do you measure the impact your teaching is having on your students' learning?
Okay, a number of ways. One that I really like is, again, using that HSC RAP data analysis, which gives you a really clear picture of the direction that you're tracking in with your HSC students, and the impact that you've had with your class for that particular year. Also looking at grades, seeing how you went for a particular task, or even just monitoring how well kids are able to work independently and apply their knowledge in class.
Okay.
So constantly making those observations. Levels of engagement in the classroom as well. If the kids come in and they're settled and they're ready to learn, and they're getting on with their work and they're asking questions, and I feel like that's a pretty good gauge that you're having a positive impact.
Yeah, okay, great. So you're kind of mostly looking at, I guess, day-to-day engagement in the classroom, and then looking at assessment grades, and then RAP data analysis. That's kind of where you're looking at where your impact is having the most effect. Okay.
Sometimes I'll even do things where I'll get them a little, I'll give them a blank piece of paper and just get them to write 3 observations about my teaching anonymously, and I'll collect them at the end of the lesson. And that gives me a good little idea of how I'm travelling with the class and what they like about me and what I don't like. And
what types of questions do you normally put on that?
So usually I'll get them to write down one thing they've enjoyed learning for the term or for the topic. Was there anything that they wish they learned about, or any learning activity they would like to do a bit more of in class? And I always get them to write a general comment about me as a teacher. Okay. It can be quite insightful.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. And this is definitely going to help me a lot going forward in my teaching career as well. So you've taught me some things just in this 10 minutes. So yeah, thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Emily.